The Great Sith War, caused by Exarchun and Ulical was one of the greatest conflicts in the history of the galaxy that caused great devastation. After the victory of the Republic in the Jedi Order, the reconstruction of the galaxy didn't take long. A year after the end of the Great Sith War, in the 3995 before Battle of Dxun, the so-called Restoration period began, a time of peace where the Republic invited private corporations to invest in planets under its jurisdiction in exchange for economic facilities and safe travel along hyperspace routes. This incentive would be a great help to various planets that truly needed the injection of that capital so that their inhabitants had the opportunity to restore their lives. And on part of the Republic, it would be of great help to activate trade throughout the galaxy. On the Jedi Order side, countless knights had perished in the war, including great Jedi Masters such as Master Budu Bas or Master Arkoh, each of them being the mentors of Exarchun and Ulical respectively. In addition, the Order suffered one of the greatest atrocities driven by Exar, a purge against different Jedi Masters at the hands of their own apprentices, leaving wounds in the Order that were still fresh. Throughout galactic history, the enemies of the Republic and the Jedi Order have been diverse. However, the Great Hyperspace War, the Beast Wars, and the Great Sith War have been conflicts that have two things in common. First, these were the wars in which both organizations suffered the most to the point of being on the verge of defeat. And second, those three conflicts were directly or indirectly organized by the Sith. In fact, for the Republic, and especially for the Jedi Order, since their first appearance in the galaxy, the Sith were an uncomfortable enemy. They had caused so much damage to the galaxy and the Order that this feeling escalated to the point of finding no other solution other than causing the extinction of the Sith after the Great Hyperspace War. Despite this, the threat of their return was present in the Order, and to prevent the Sith from causing destruction again, the Jedi remained alert to any rumor linked to them. However, light casts shadows, shadows define light. In their eternal conflict, neither can exist alone, so the existence of the Sith would always be latent even if the Order thought that everything was under control. Until the year 3996 before Battle of Dxun, the Great Sith War was the last conflict that the Republic and the Jedi Order had fought, which was supported by four pillars: Exarchun, Ulical, Ali Makito with Krath, and the Mandalorians. The latter suffered their defeat on Endor, attacking the walled city of Isis. Despite the Mandalorians being some of the deadliest warriors in the galaxy, they were forced to retreat to Onderon's moon, Dxun. There, the savage creatures that inhabited the moon's jungles finished off the few remaining Mandalorians, including their own leader, Mandalore the Indomitable. His sudden fall left the Mandalorian clans without their guidance. However, the true strength of the Mandalorians didn't lie in one individual, but in the tradition that united them. The title of Mandalore wasn't a simple name, but a mantle of responsibility and honor that had to be picked up and carried by the most worthy warrior. This succession was not a mere formality, but the cornerstone that kept Mandalorian culture alive through the generations. Thus, it was that in the midst of the adversity they faced, Mandalore's mask would be found by a Mandalorian in the jungles of Dxun, who would claim the title as the new leader of the Mandalorians. With the name of Ultimate, Mandalore the Ultimate took up his role as the new leader. The current state of this group of warriors after the war, and even before the Great Sith War, was particular. A culture that lives by and for war wasn't sustainable in long term. Using that to forge a reputation and fame sounded intimidating, but in practice it was questionable. Human and material resources were increasingly depleted, leading to the collapse of society. By focusing only on military expansion, crucial aspects of society were neglected, severely limiting the growth, evolution, and even the existence of the culture itself. Since the reign of the first leader, Mandalore I, each military campaign was only a war action. There was no structure, and the conquered resources couldn't be properly used, losing an opportunity for development. There were also no great technological discoveries since, although the Mandalorians were updated in depth thanks to the wars they conquered, it was only that, an integration and not discovery. All this would change with the union of different elements that shared the same objective, to reshape the Mandalorian identity and perpetuate the culture. After the Great Sith War, various Mandalorians spread throughout the galaxy. Mandalore the Ultimate had already taken power, but the consequences of the war were still being paid. These Mandalorians who had separated, they had formed their own group, now calling themselves Neo-Crusaders. They had perceived that the defeat in the Sith War had been caused by organizational deficiencies, and the Mandalorians had taken on an individualistic perception. So, the Neo-Crusaders adopted a more structured military hierarchy and command system to increase efficiency. Fortunately, the new leaders shared the same ideals. Mandalore the Ultimate used that group as a base to reinvent the Mandalorians. While still focused on combat and conquest, he placed more emphasis on discipline and unity. The spread of the Neo-Crusaders of culture bears fruit in the Mandalorian successful conquest of wars not aligned with the Republic. Unlike other leaders, Mandalore would draw on the talents of different advisors who would perform different tasks in different areas with the same goal, to achieve victory. The chief strategist and field marshal of Mandalore, with great intelligence and planning military campaigns with a cold and fierce personality. His tactical genius would contribute to the great victories of the Mandalorians. A Mandalorian commander with a gift for war, with enormous potential to even become a Mandalore. Rohlan's particular personality was made to be on the battlefield, commanding soldiers of flesh and blood, and not moving symbols on a map far from the trenches. A former Jedi Master who would join in the ranks of the Mandalorians with the intention of forming the Mandalorian Knights, Mandalorian warriors sensitive to the Force. The Mandalorian scientist and doctor. His job wasn't to heal. On the contrary, his task would be to perform vivisections on captured Jedi, to study their connection with the Force with the goal of finding ways to grant Mandalorians similar abilities. Cold and calculating, Demagol's methods were cruel, causing great pain and fear in his enemies. Demagol's assistant, a Mandalorian who shares the same curiosity as the scientist, his fascination with the Jedi. However, unlike Demagol, whose research was more focused on the Force, Pulsifer was sure that the Jedi abilities came from some kind of magic or mysterious device. From an early age, Canderous' great potential was known, being considered one of the most promising warriors to the point of being recruited by Mandalore the Ultimate and given the role of battle tactician. His leadership and skill in combat helped ensure many victories for the Mandalorians. Another important change that Mandalore the Ultimate left for the posterity was the inclusion of new warriors in the clans, who didn't necessarily have to be of the original Mandalorian species, the Tongue. Mandalore recognized the ferocity of his Mandalorians. However, as a leader, he questioned the true impact. He reflected on his society, a set of thrill-seeking warriors whose exploits had barely borne fruit. Convinced of the need for change, on a trip to the Outer Rim territories to the planet Shogun, the Mandalorian leader had a revelation, a revolutionary vision. Strength lies in diversity. So from now on, anyone who could prove themselves in combat, embrace the Mandalorian code and life, whether tongue or not, would be accepted as a member. With its ranks swelled by countless new recruits of diverse species, Mandalore now decided to build on what they had already conquered, to forge an empire. With this new organization, a nomadic people of soldiers was transformed into an expansionist civilization with galactic ambitions. Warriors would rise to the top, to be supported by a base of farmers, artisans, manufacturers, slaves, and those deemed dishonorable. The armor of the Mandalorians is one of the most representative things of their culture, and even this was renewed in this new stage of their identity. The Neo-Crusaders' armor was sleeker and more uniform, though by necessity adapted to fit any number of species. It was also color-coded by rank: blue for rank-and-file troops, silver for frontline units and veterans, red for rally masters, and gold for field marshals. Most striking to tradition-minded Mandalorians, it was rarely made of Beskar. There was no way to mine and forge Beskar quickly enough to outfit the greatly expanded Mandalorian force. And as a final touch, the new Mandalorian army had everything: assets, weapons, armor. However, something was missing. A force that united these ferocious individuals into a cohesive whole. They needed a symbol. And as a contribution from Cassus Fett, it would be based on the same symbol as his predecessors, an honor to history. The banner of the Mandalorian Crusaders was represented as a ring adorned with sharp points. The points represent the weapons of warriors, while the ring symbolizes the cycles that govern life: birth and death, conquest and defeat, and the promise that new warriors will arise to carry on the traditions of the departed. However, in this new Mandalorian era, a stylized Mandalorian skull would be added, symbolizing the authority of the Mandalore to interpret the will of the gods, this being the banner that will fly on countless battlefields. With a renewed structure and the advice of experienced advisors, Mandalore forged an army without equal. Each warrior, each unity, each fleet became a crucial link in an unbreakable chain. The new strategies took effect. The Neo-Crusaders attacked non-aligned wars with a brutality and efficiency rarely seen before in the galaxy. Following the Great Sith War, the Republic's authority waned or even disappeared in some parts. Planets that were theoretically part of the Republic were just that, mere theory. This was the perfect space that Mandalore the Ultimate and the Neo-Crusaders took full advantage of, conquering isolated and unprotected worlds, moving freely across the Tion, and began harassing the outlying worlds of the Hutts. The Neo-Crusaders made use of the conquered resources, both weapons and soldiers, and also they used shipyards to build warships. Mandalore the Ultimate, recognizing the importance of rigorous military training, made a decision to establish the main Mandalorian training camp in the same place where his predecessor had fallen. The ferocity of the Muur Talisman would forge unmatched warriors. Thus, the jungles that once symbolized defeat became the cradle of a new generation of Mandalorians. Under the tutelage of the most merciless nature and the visionary leadership of Mandalore, the recruits learned to master the most hostile environment in the Mandalorian outpost of Dxun. After a complete revolution and a total dedication to expansionist planning, in the year 3978 before Battle of Dxun, 2 years before the Mandalorian Wars began, something took Mandalore the Ultimate's advisors by surprise. Mandalore acted in a way that was unusual to what everyone was used to. All of this culminated in an idea: launching an all-out attack on the Republic. Mandalore felt the Republic was weak, vulnerable, and was convinced that they would emerge victorious. So he summoned the warriors of the clans, and they followed him into what they thought would be the Mandalorians' greatest conquest. Nobody doubted. When Mandalore called, the clans answered. While there may be battles and disputes among those seeking to be Mandalore's successor when he fell, once the decision was made, there was never any debate. In the year 3976 before Battle of Dxun, the galaxy found itself plunged into a conflict that would reshape its future. Mandalorian Neo-Crusaders, led by Mandalore the Ultimate, began their ruthless conquest of the Outer Rim. In the face of this aggression, the two pillars of the galactic stability, the Republic and the Jedi Order, experienced and responded differently to the attack. Their divergent paths setting the stage for years of turmoil. The Neo-Crusaders had amassed a large swath of territory that even dwarfed the Hutts. All of this great progress was in part thanks to the Republic's weak defense. So, dating back to the year 3976 before Battle of Dxun, taking advantage of his enemy's apathy, Mandalore the Ultimate initiated the first skirmishes of what history would call as the Mandalorian Wars. The children of Mandalore's first attack was on the planet Althir under the command of Canderous Ordo. In this attack, Ordo led a Mandalorian fleet that was vastly outnumbered by the Althiri forces. In a reckless maneuver, he broke formation to quickly eliminate the enemy commander, ending the battle swiftly and minimizing overall losses. 3 years after the attack on Althir, the Mandalorians turned their sights on Cathar. What would take place here would be one of the most harrowing and violent events of the war, one that the Mandalorians would pay dearly for. Commanded by Mandalore's right-hand man, Cassus Fett led the attack on the Cathar inhabitants that was utterly devastated and heartless. The Mandalorians massacred the majority of the population. The Neo-Crusaders showed unmatched brutality against the innocent Cathar, and despite them trying to escape for their lives, the Mandalorians' machinery and weaponry helped them easily hunt down the felines. The consequence of the conquest of the Cathar planet would end with the near extinction of the Cathar species, massacring over 90% of the population. Cassus Fett and his Mandalorians easily managed to conquer the planet, but it wasn't the end yet. Cruelly, Fett relentlessly hunted the last hopeless Cathar survivors into the ocean. One of the Mandalorians who was in Cassus Fett's ranks opposed the massacre, asking for mercy for the Cathar. The merciful soldier's action wasn't worthy of the Mandalorian culture, so Cassus Fett, without hesitation, gave the order to finish off the remaining Cathar, and also the Mandalorian who had opposed died alongside them, leaving only the helmet as a witness to what happened in Cathar's tragic fate. Over the years, the Mandalorians conquered non-aligned planets and devastated different places to forge an empire mainly beyond Republic space. In a first phase, the Mandalorians had free pass to conquer from the year 3976 to 3964 before Battle of Dxun, and in addition to taking control of Althir and Cathar, the planets that fell into the Mandalorian were a lot. After an unopposed Mandalorian expansion, the Galactic Republic had taken limited action against the threat during the early years of the war. The Senate had been reluctant to engage in a full-scale war, drawing criticism from some Jedi and Republic citizens. Faced with the Mandalorian threat attacking non-Republic aligned planets, different worlds sought to unite. For example, Taris, taking a seat in the Galactic Senate in 3966 before Battle of Dxun. The Republic took years to fully engage against the Mandalorians because of government indecisions and internal conflicts. The Senate couldn't agree on a course of action, partly because the initial attacks were in distant regions they didn't consider crucial or planets not aligned to the Republic. Many worlds were reluctant to spend credits on another war so soon after the Great Sith War. Additionally, the Republic underestimated the Mandalorians and lacked unity in recognizing the threat. With these great indecisions, the period between the years 3965 and 3964 before Battle of Dxun, where the Mandalorians and the Republic forces fight a few skirmishes along the Republic border near Taris, was called the False War. The Mandalorian expansion was mostly in the eastern side of the galaxy, but increasingly it was going towards the core. Spacers' tales told of massive Mandalorian war fleets lurking in the dark beyond the rim, but for a decade the Republic did little but watch and wait. True to their original idea of diversity and conquering with logic, Mandalore the Ultimate and the Mandalorians conquered Flashpoint, a scientific facility of the Republic whose main reason for conquering was to give it to Dr. Demagol. After having taken Flashpoint, the advance of Mandalore and his warriors had reached the limits of the territory of the Republic. As the Mandalorian Wars raged across the Outer Rim, the year 3964 before Battle of Dxun saw a critical series of engagements centered on the agricultural world of Suurja. This planet, while seemingly unremarkable, held strategic importance due to its proximity to Taris, the crown jewel of the Outer Rim. Suurja served as a breadbasket for Taris, supplying the Q monopolies. This symbiotic relationship made Suurja a prime target for the Mandalorians. In response to the Mandalorian threat, the Republic dispatched one of its most capable officers, Admiral Zayne Carrick, who orchestrated a masterful defense of the Suurja system. Admiral Carrick's strategy at Suurja played a crucial role in maintaining the integrity of the Jebble-Vanquo-Tarnith line. This defensive cordon served as a boundary between Republic space and the advanced Neo-Crusader forces. The line stretched across several star systems, with Vanquo, Tarnith, and Jebble serving as key strongpoints. This defense line was more than just a military boundary. It represented the Republic's determination to hold the Mandalorian advance and protect its citizens in the Outer Rim. Meanwhile, within the Jedi Order, the High Council was in great indecision. Jedi Masters, steeped in centuries of tradition, advised patience and caution as they awaited the return of a greater darkness, the Sith. They had been the cause of the Order's worst nightmares, so the Mandalorian threat, in the eyes of the Jedi, seemed insignificant compared to the Sith threat. A Sith hadn't been seen in the galaxy for hundreds of years following the Great Hyperspace War and their purge by the Republic, but the Jedi remained vigilant. In 3964 before Battle of Dxun, as the Mandalorian Wars raged across the Outer Rim, a charismatic Jedi Knight named Revan took a bold step that would forever change the course of the war. Frustrated with the Jedi Council's inaction in the face of Mandalorian aggression, Revan founded a splinter group that would come to be known as the Revanchists. Revan, a prodigy among the Jedi, was driven by a deep sense of duty to protect the innocent. He believed that the Jedi's role as guardians of peace and justice in the galaxy demanded their intervention in the war. The formation of the Revanchists was a direct response to the Jedi Council's policy of non-intervention, arguing that immediate action was necessary to save countless lives. The emergence of this group created a deep schism within the Jedi Order. Many younger Jedi, inspired by Revan's passionate calls to action, flocked to his banner. This exodus of talented knights and Padawans weakened the Order and challenged its traditional hierarchy. The Council found its authority questioned once again, leading to heated debates and strained relationships among the Jedi. Revan, charismatic and powerful, it was inevitable that members of the Order would join the new movement. Mitra Surik, Pharaoh, Kari Aghasin, Talvonesan, Saseterib, and Isotsa were a few of Revan's followers, but one stood out among them: Alec, known among his friends as a Squint, Revan's closest friend and most loyal supporter, who in the early days of the movement helped Revan recruit more knights. Also known as the Jedi Crusaders, they began to carry out their first tasks during the year 3964 before Battle of Dxun, at the same time that the Republic with Admiral Sol Karath defended the borders of the Republic. The Revanchists decided to move to the Outer Rim, all this without the Jedi High Council's support. On their way to enemy territories, the Revanchists tried to rally support for their cause and recruit more Jedi to join their ranks. En route, they made a significant stop on Taris, a world teetering on the brink of the conflict. During their stay, Alec encountered a young Padawan named Zayne Carrick. Zayne, known for his clumsiness and perceived lack of connection to the Force, was an unlikely candidate for the Revanchists' cause. Yet, Alec saw something in the young man. Perhaps a hidden potential, or simply the earnest desire to do good, that prompted him to make his speech. With passionate words, he spoke of the Mandalorian threat, the Republic's need for defenders, and the Jedi's duty to protect the innocent. He painted a picture of heroism and purpose, offering Zayne a chance to be part of something greater than himself. Zayne, however, was torn. The young Padawan's commitment to his training and his loyalty to his master Lucien Dray conflicted with the allure of Alec's words. Unfortunately for the Revanchists, no Jedi from Taris joined their cause. Unbeknownst to both Alec and Zayne, this seemingly small interaction would have far-reaching consequences. Before departing, Alec mentions to Zayne that their next stop is Suurja, inviting Zayne back, but the Padawan again declines the invitation. The arrival of the Revanchists on the planet Taris was an injection of determination into Zayne's life. Despite reaching the Padawan stage, everyone at Taris Jedi Academy, including Taris Jedi Masters, his fellow Padawans, and even himself, knew of Zayne's limited ability with the Force. Despite this, Carrick remained positive in trying to improve every day. The tasks that Zayne maintained on Taris were very easy, but due to his lack of experience, no matter how simple it was, the Padawan couldn't succeed in his duty. One of them was to try to capture Morne Hieroglyph, known as Griff, a trickster and black marketeer. Everything would change for Zayne days after his meeting with the Revanchist Alec, when the Jedi Masters of Taris had announced to their apprentices the promotion of all of them from Padawans to Knights. On the day of his expected promotion, Zayne arrived late to the ceremony at the Jedi Tower, a habit that inadvertently saved his life. Upon entering the tower, he made a horrifying discovery: the bodies of his fellow Padawans, old friends, murdered. To his shock and disbelief, Zayne realized that the massacre had been perpetrated by none other than the own Jedi Masters: Lucien Dray, Fel, Cornelia, Raana, and Zamar. Zayne, stumbling upon the scene, managed to escape alive from the Jedi Masters of Taris, becoming the only survivor and witness to the crime. In a desperate attempt to cover up their actions and eliminate the last potential threat, the 5 Jedi Masters quickly turned the tables on Zayne. They publicly accused him of murdering his fellow Padawans, portraying him as a dangerous and unstable individual who had succumbed to the dark side. This false accusation spread rapidly through Taris society. The bumbling Padawan suddenly found himself branded as a murderer, haunted by both local law enforcement and his former masters. Zayne was forced to go on the run, determined to clear his name and bring the true criminals to justice. Hopeless and trying to escape Taris, Zayne was able to find a particular group of allies who would help him on his path to redemption. Grief, the same criminal who was trying to capture and bringing him to justice. A female Arcanian named Jarrell, who boasted of having great fighting skills, along with her faithful friend, Camber, an Arcanian man who at first glance seemed to be crazy, but had great intelligence. A bulk-loading droid of the LB series, named LB. The reason the 5 Jedi Masters orchestrated the massacre of their own Padawans was because of their interpretation of a vision known as the Rogue Moon Prophecy. The prophecy, experienced by the Masters during a meditation session, depicted a figure in a red spacesuit becoming a Sith Lord. This Sith would be responsible for the destruction of the Jedi Order and the Republic. In their vision, the Masters were killed by the new Sith. Lucien Dre, Quanelia, Summer, Fel, and Raana linked this disturbing vision to another prophecy known as the Prophecy of the Five. This ancient augury had been foreseen by their mentor years before, the mother of Lucien, Crinda Dre. In their fear and misinterpretation, the Masters of Taris concluded that their own Padawans were the 5 mentioned in Crinda's vision. They believed that one of their apprentices would become the Sith Lord of the Rogue Moon Prophecy, bringing about the downfall of the Jedi and the Republic. Driven by the conviction, the desire to prevent this dark future, and also the mutual hatred of the 5 Jedi for the Sith, they made the fateful decision to eliminate all of their Padawans during what was supposed to be their knighting ceremony. In a last act before beginning his odyssey, Zayne would send a message to the 5 Jedi Masters. The Padawan informed him that to clear his name, he would hunt them down one by one until one of them confessed the truth. Zayne no longer cared about anything, since he knew that he had a death mark on his back. And as a final threat, Zayne emphasizes that if he ends up collapsing the Jedi Order, he wants them to remember that they were the ones who started it. In the tumultuous era preceding the Mandalorian Wars, a secretive organization emerged from the shadows of the Jedi Order. Known as the Jedi Covenant, a clandestine group operated with a singular purpose: to prevent the return of the Sith at any cost. Founded in the wake of the Great Sith War, the Covenant's members were haunted by the devastation wrought upon the galaxy and were determined to ensure such horrors would never come to pass again. At the heart of the Covenant's creation stood Crinda Dre, a Jedi Master of immense power and foresight, student of the late Jedi Masters Arkoh and Adasca. Traumatized by the losses she endured during the Great Sith War, including the death of her husband, Crinda dedicated herself to honing her precognitive abilities. Her unique gift for seeing potential futures became the cornerstone upon which the Covenant was built. Crinda took it upon herself to train a new generation of Jedi Seers, believing that their combined visions could safeguard the galaxy from impending darkness. The organization Crinda established operated under a strict hierarchy, with each level playing a crucial role in the Covenant's machinations. At the apex stood the leaders, Crinda herself and her loyal assistant, Hayze. The backbone of the Covenant's structure was formed by the Watch Circles, specialized groups, each with their own focus and expertise. The first Watch Circle, led by Lucien Dre, was considered the most prestigious and was directly involved in many of the Covenant's most critical operations. Various other groups of less importance than the one led by Lucien existed, even named after Jedi Master who fell in war, such as the Circle Kulu, in honor of Jedi Master Shuanef Kulu, and Watch Circle Budu, named after the legendary Jedi Master Budu Siosgbaz, who both died in the Sith War. And finally, the Economic Studies Circle. Its primary role was to focus on economic and financial matters across the galaxy, monitoring galactic economic trends and developments, analyzing financial data and market movements, and predicting potential economic crises or shifts that could impact galactic stability. The Seers of the Circles formed the mystical core of the Covenant, the first Watch Circle being the most important, made up of Seers trained by Krinta. Among them, Fel, Quanelia, Raana, Summer. These four sensitive individuals dedicated their lives to peering into possible futures, seeking to identify and prevent the rise of the Sith. Their visions, often cryptic and open to interpretation, drove many of the Covenant's actions. Operated in the field were the Covenant Shadows, secret agents who worked to locate and secure Sith artifacts. These Jedi operated with a great degree of autonomy, reaching the limit of being unknown Jedi since their information was nowhere to be found. They often undertook dangerous missions to prevent darkside relics from falling into the wrong hands. Among them is Celeste Morne. After an excursion, the Jedi Masters gathered, meditated, and together shared a horrible vision. A Sith Lord in a red spacesuit, bringing a destruction to the galaxy and annihilating each of them. Terror took hold of the Jedi Masters, and knowing that a Sith would return and that this dark figure, they believed, would arise from among their own Padawans. The Covenant Seers had pored over the visions for days, their minds reeling from the implications. They convinced themselves that one of their current apprentices was destined to fall, to become the very threat they had sworn to prevent. In their fear, they reached a terrible conclusion. As night fell over Taris, the members of the First Watch Circle steeled themselves for what they saw as a necessary action. They would eliminate all the Padawans, cutting off the possibility of this dark future. In their twisted logic, they justified the act as a sacrifice, a few lives traded for the safety of countless others across the galaxy. The Covenant's extremist ideology had led them to this point, where they were willing to commit unspeakable acts in the name of their cause. And so it was that the 5 Jedi Masters of Taris would massacre 4 of their 5 Padawans, with Zayne Carrick being the lucky one to avoid that fate. The Padawan massacre on Taris had profound implications for the Jedi Order, both internally and in the public eye. This event severely damaged the Order's reputation and credibility at a crucial time when the galaxy was facing the Mandalorian threat. In addition to the massacre of the Padawans, another misfortune befell the Order in the same year of 3964 before Battle of Dxun. After the Revanchists stopped on Taris, their direction was toward enemy Mandalorian territory. Revan's followers, eager to investigate the consequences of the conflict and gather evidence of Mandalorian atrocities, arrived in Suurja. Unbeknownst to the Revanchists, the Mandalorians had set a trap. The Mandalore army launched a surprise attack. The ambush caught the Jedi off guard, resulting in the capture of many Revan followers, including Revan's trusted friend, Alec. Revan, the leader, would be saved from capture since he, unlike his warriors, wouldn't go to Suurja, but rather he would go to investigate Mandalorian activity on Onderon and its moon, Dxun. Mandalore the Ultimate, seizing the opportunity presented by the chaos on Taris, launched a major offensive aimed at capturing the strategically important world. This offensive marked the beginning of the Onslaught phase of the Mandalorian Wars. After Zayne Carrick supposedly ended the lives of his companions in the Padawan Massacre and was also able to escape safely from the Republic and the Jedi, He showed the Order to be vulnerable and civil order collapsed. The efforts of the Restoration period had been ruined. Investments were withdrawn for Republic-allied planets, including Taris. And finally, Taris' 5 Jedi Masters were removed from the planet, leaving the Bliss alone and unprotected. Mandalore, knowing everything that was happening, took advantage of the Republic's weakness and gave the signal to attack. The prologue is over, and the real Mandalorian Wars had begun with the first direct attack on the Republic in the year 3960 before Battle of Dxun, the Battle of Vanquo. The Mandalorians attacked this nearby mining world, which was part of the Republic's defensive line. By striking at Vanquo, the Mandalorians forced the Republic fleet to divide its attention and resources. This clever maneuver exposed a weakness in the Republic's defenses, creating an opportunity that Mandalore and his forces were quick to exploit. Cassus Fett recognized the success of their strategy when he observed the Republic fleet splitting its left flank to defend Vanquo. This division of forces left a critical opening in the Republic's defensive line, allowing the Mandalorians to press their advantage. The true objective of the Mandalorians was not Vanquo. By drawing the Republic's attention to the planet, they had successfully created a path to strike at the important world of Taris. Leading the conquest of Vanquo, Mandalore chose a particular warrior who was part of the Mandalorian army, Rohlan Dyre, known as the Questioner, a Mandalorian active during the early stages of the war. All Mandalorians live by and for war, and when their leader Mandalore speaks, they respond without hesitation. However, although Rohlan completely identifies with the culture and is proud to be part of the Mandalorians, from the beginning, he knew something was wrong with Mandalore's decision to start a war against the Republic. He earned his nickname due to his habit of questioning Mandalorian tactics and motives behind their conquests. Rohlan wasn't convinced by the answers that his leaders gave him. Everything related to the origin of the war wasn't of the new Crusader Mandalorian style. The Questioner was a valuable warrior for Mandalore and its army. They knew of his great abilities, but he was also an uncomfortable person with so many questions he had. More than 5 times Rohlan had tried to find on his own the answers he sought, fleeing the ranks of the Mandalorians, but they always caught him, and instead of executing him, they sent him back to the battle, to the most dangerous places, because it didn't matter if he fought and won, or if he fought and died. Either ending was the right one for Mandalore. At the Battle of Vanquo, Rohlan had been chosen to lead the assault on the planet. Despite being the commander of the mission, his growing doubts about the war's purpose led him to take actions that would alter his path. Upon arriving in the planet, the Mandalorians found no opposition to their conquest, only encountering Padawan Zayne Carrick and his group of fugitives. They had arrived on the planet earlier, and for different reasons, the female Arcanian Jarrell had disguised herself as a Jedi, using Zayne's lightsaber. The Mandalorians attacked and took the fake Jedi hostage. During the chaos of the battle, Rohlan fought against Zayne and Griff and saw an opportunity to break away from the Mandalorian forces once again. He boarded the ship where Zayne Carrick's team had arrived, the last resort, and headed away from the Mandalorians. However, the Padawan, along with his crew, were able to stop the Mandalorian. With tempers calm, the Padawan and Griff questioned Rohlan. The Mandalorian opened up to everyone, talking about his beginnings and his friction with the Mandalorian leader about the reason for this war. After knowing what was happening, escaping and completing his revenge against the Jedi Master was not the prime concern. Now, for Zayne and his entire team, it was necessary to go rescue Jarrell, and for that, Rohlan confessed to knowing his whereabouts. Flashpoint. The shady thing about this stellar research station was that Demagol, the top Mandalorian biologist, captured Jedi and studied them there in order to understand their talents and the source of their powers. All this with unethical, painful practices that often ended with the subject's student death. After knowing this, the next stop for Zayne Carrick, Griff, Camper, Elvi, and now Rohlan Dyre would be to rescue Jarrell from Flashpoint and from the clutches of Demagol. Among the ranks of the Mandalorians, Demagol stood out as a very important asset to Mandalore the Ultimate, being one of his main advisors who could change the course of the war. Demagol, born as Antos Wirrik, an individual of the Celtron species whose life was marked by trauma, ambition, and a ruthless pursuit of knowledge. At a young age, the peace of his home planet ended as a group of blue-skinned, humanoid cyborgs of the East Colony species took Antos as a slave. Completely lacking in empathic abilities with others, Wirrik knew the importance of survival, and it was thanks to the East Colony that he had his first introduction to the scientific area. He volunteered as an assistant to his captors, learning his master's surgical techniques. Shortly before the Sith War began, the Mandalorians were conquering world after world throughout the galaxy, and among the defeated peoples, the East Colony were one of them. When the Mandalorians attacked the world where Antos was held, he was freed and subsequently adopted by the Mandalorians. Antos was a special boy, so much that the Mandalorian leader himself, Mandalore the Indomitable, personally taught him martial arts. This experience instilled in him a deep admiration for Mandalorian strength and a burning desire to enhance it further. After joining the ranks of the Mandalorians, the war known as the Sith War would break out, and with it, many consequences would come for everyone. Two talented Dark Jedi, Exar Kun and Ulic Droma, would declare war on the Republic. With this, Ulic Droma would seek to take control of a ready-made army, with the Mandalorians being the chosen ones. The Mandalorian leader at that time, Antos Wirrik's master, Mandalore the Indomitable, would fight in a hand-to-hand duel against the Jedi, and knowing the capabilities of his master, Antos was impressed to know that the best Mandalorian warrior had been defeated by Kaldroma, leaving him totally stunned. He became obsessed with understanding and replicating their abilities. His curiosity led him to investigate the items and possessions of the Jedi Kaldroma, finding a robe that caught his attention. Antos took it with the goal of finding some genetic sample that could reveal more about the source of the Jedi's powers. But before he could investigate, the Great Sith War had ended. Exar Kun and Ulic Droma had been defeated, as had the Mandalorians, and their master, Mandalore the Indomitable, had died. Wirrik fled away, but he took the robe. Fate would lead Antos to continue his research in a very particular place, the Arcanian University. In this place, everything was combined perfectly so that the future Demagol could develop. Wirrik had talent, and the Arcanian biologists didn't have any scientific morality. Anything that served to achieve great discoveries in the name of science, they would do without hesitation. A perfect fit. From among students with dubious morality like him, Antos made his discovery. The robe wasn't Ulic Droma's. It actually belonged to the greatest Arcanian in history, Master Arkoh. He was a master of Ulic Droma, and when Arkoh died in the war, he vanished with the Force, leaving only his tunic, being preserved by his apprentice and eventually reaching the hands of Antos. Wirrik had made a breakthrough. He had the studies and genetic material of one of the greatest Jedi Masters in history, but without the proper tools, he couldn't complete his masterpiece. Faced with this problem, a solution emerged. The Mandalorians were interested in avenging his defeat in the Great Sith War at the hands of the Jedi, so they provided Antos with everything he needed, founding a research colony on a hidden planet, Osadia. Demagol's master plan in Osadia was complex. He believed that by manipulating Master Arka's genetic material, he could unlock the secret to Force sensitivity, creating Mandalorian Knights, combining Mandalorian warrior culture with the Force abilities of the Jedi. Modifying babies based on Master Arka Jeth's genetic material wasn't successful. The Jedi Master's DNA wasn't compatible with Anto's wishes, but among the scientist's defeats, a single victory emerged. He had managed to create a first child. He called her Adasca, meaning the triumph. After the scientific victory, there were more children with great talents and physical abilities, all linked to Jedi Master Arka Jeth. However, when everything was going well for the Doctor, he made the worst mistake ever. An important ally for Antos in this new stage of creating Force-sensitive beings was the slave organization known as the Crucible, as a source to find fathers and mothers who were willing to adopt the children. However, the Crucible would be greedier than Antos, since after returning to Osadia, he would find all of his staff dead, his laboratory completely destroyed, and the children gone. The destruction of his research completely devastated the scientist. The Celtran set out to wander the galaxy in search of his children, but to no avail. During the search, he encountered the Mandalorians again, and it was from here that he decided to join their cause under the name Demagol, the Flesh Carver, or contracted as Demagol. In the Mandalorian Wars, he took an active role alongside his ambitious assistant, Pulsifer. He established a research facility at Flashpoint Station, where he conducted brutal experiments on captured Jedi. These experiments were driven by his lifelong obsession to unlock the secrets of the Force and transfer it to his Mandalorian warriors. At Flashpoint, Demagol subjected Jedi prisoners to horrific trials, testing the limits of their abilities and physiology. His methods were cruel and inhumane, earning him a reputation for sadism even among the Mandalorians. All of this was in service of his grand vision. Among the Jedi who fell into Demagol's clutches, and thanks to Suurja and Vanquo, were the Revanchists and the false Jedi Jarrell. Inside Flashpoint, Jarrell from Zayne's team and Alec from the Revanchists meet. She helps the Squint rejoin since the Jedi had been a test subject in Demagol's experiments. Immediately, when Alec talks to Jarrell, he realizes that she is not a Jedi, so he asks her the reason for her presence on the station. Demagol introduces himself to Jarrell and then, mockingly, tells Alec that he is his favorite, but is eager to begin his experiments on her. However, knowing that Jarrell is not a Jedi and therefore wouldn't survive the atrocities of Demagol, the Revanchists, gathering his strength and with great courage, takes the place of the false Jedi, and thus he receives the punishment once again. After Alec's turn, Demagol would undoubtedly take Jarrell. In Demagol's past, his history with Arcanians and his experiments with Master Arka Jeth's DNA spark great curiosity in the false Jedi of this species. As he holds Jarrell, he is shocked to see a mark on her neck, prompting the urge to take her to the lab and begin testing. At that exact moment, Rohlan Dyre enters Flashpoint with Zayne Carrick captured, ready for Demagol to experiment on him. Rohlan helps Demagol set up Zayne on the dissection table. While both Mandalorians are in the same room, the scientist recognizes Rohlan for his fame as the Questioner. He defends himself by clarifying that he is helping the cause of Mandalore in his own way, just like Demagol. About to begin the vivisection on Zayne, Rohlan attacks the Mandalorian from behind, leaving him unconscious. This being all part of the plan to rescue Jarrell. After that, Zayne would use Demagol's armor to impersonate him to his subordinates inside Flashpoint, using the Force. Zayne would plant explosives on different Mandalorian ships and later, with the help of Griff, fabricate a supposed Republic attack on the station, using the previously planted explosives. The plan went perfectly. Almost all the Mandalorians who were in Flashpoint escaped, leaving only Demagol unconscious inside. Zayne Carrick returned to free Jarael and all the Jedi who had been captured, including Alec, while Rohlan and Dyre returned for Demagol. After being saved, Alec thanks Zayne Carrick, and from inside the station, Rohlan and Dyre escorts a Demagol completely knocked out and without knowing where he is, to be handed over to the Revanchists and then take him to Curzon to answer for all the crimes he has committed. Alec recognizes Rohlan's bravery and conviction, so he invites him to return with them to Curzon since it would be a great help. However, in a somewhat strange way, the Mandalorian rejects the Jedi's invitation. Zayne Carrick makes him reconsider, managing to convince Rohlan, and then he goes to Alec's ship. Squint's same invitation is now addressed to Zayne. For the second time, the Revanchists encourage the Padawan to be part of them. However, Carrick again rejects the call, justifying that he must finish an important matter. Before leaving, all the Jedi were given a special suit that protected them from the particular conditions of Flashpoint. Upon boarding their ship, Alec says goodbye to Zayne, and he also thanks for the red spacesuit that he had given him. The Mandalorians' conquest of Vanquo was only the beginning of a series of devastating military campaigns. The ice planet of Jebble, along with the mountain planet Onderon, suffered the same fate. The renewed Neo-Crusaders, along with their war tactics, fulfilled their objective. The walled city of Isis, the same city that had history of the dark side thanks to Freedom Nath, and the city that Ulical Drama defended, was no match for the Mandalorians. The resistance was laughable. The city fell within mere hours. But among the conquests of enemy territory, the Taris objective had been achieved. The Taris Siege began with a strategic move by Cassus Fett, the leader of this conquest. Fett, known for his tactical acumen, initiated the siege with a psychological warfare maneuver. He issued a proclamation to the people of Taris, making official the liberation of the inhabitants to now be part of the Mandalorians and only serve blind loyalty to Mandalore the Ultimate. Also inviting anyone to be part of them, having an armor and helmet waiting for them. This proclamation was a calculated move, designed to sow fear and division among the population of Taris and weaken their resistance before the current attack began. When the skies over Taris cleared of Republic forces, the Mandalorians seized the opportunity. Under Cassus Fett's command, they launched a heavy bombardment targeting the upper and middle cities of Taris. The attack was relentless and precise. Mandalorian ships rained destruction upon Taris' iconic skyline, targeting key infrastructure, government buildings, and military installations. Cassus Fett's role in this siege was vital. He coordinated assault with ruthless efficiency, demonstrating the Mandalorian superior military tactics, and the destruction was even worse without Jedi defending the city, as Lucien Dray and his Jedi companions had been removed. Cassus Fett's strategy wasn't just about physical destruction, it was also aimed at breaking the spirit of resistance on Taris. The Mandalorians later moved from aerial bombardments to a full-scale ground invasion. The iconic Basilisk war droids, ridden by Mandalorian warriors, laid waste to the city with devastating effect. These fearsome machines, combining the raw power of heavy artillery with agility, proved to be a terrifying and effective tool of conquest. What made the situation even more desperate for the people of Taris was the growing realization that help from the Republic wouldn't arrive. Although Taris was a full member of the Galactic Republic, military strategists from Coruscant had deemed the planet indefensible. After their adventure at Flashpoint, Zayne Carrick's entire crew decided to separate, seeing that everyone's interests were now different. Jarrell and Camper will take their own path, while Zayne and Grief will continue the search to clear the Padawan's name. After the group separated, the adventures didn't end for either side. On Zayne's part, without any means of transportation, Grief, exploiting his unethical abilities, is helped by mercenary and steals a ship. Despite Zayne's displeasure, the two leave for space in their new ship. However, in orbit, the Padawan and the Snevian encounter a Republic fleet and realize that their new stolen transport is a supply ship destined to feed Republic soldiers fighting the Mandalorians. Forced to take part in the fleet, Zayne and Grief, with nothing else to do, head towards battle with the Mandalorians on the planet Serroco. Meanwhile, inside Jarrell and Camper's ship, they were surprised by an unexpected threat. An assassin droid from the HK-24 series attacked him by surprise, leaving Camper very badly injured. The situation quickly escalated when the droid, after neutralizing Camper, turned its attention to Jarrell. About to shoot the Arcanian, Rohlan Dyre rescues his companions. Since Flashpoint, the Mandalorian never got on Alex's ship. Instead, all this time he had been hiding on the last resort ship, and fortunately for Camper and Jarrell, Rohlan was able to save them. The Battle of Serroco in 3963 before Battle of Dxun was a major engagement during the Mandalorian Wars. The Republic had established a military presence, a planet on the front lines of the war. Their camps were strategically positioned near the planet's major population centers, known as the Stirrup Cities. Republic forces were there to defend against possible Mandalorian incursions and to maintain a foothold on this crucial sector. Lieutenant Cartho Nasi, a skilled Republic officer, was present at Serroco during this time. It was here that he met up with Zayne Carrick. A good friendship was forged between the lieutenant and the Padawan, so despite being wanted by the law and the Republic, Zayne knew that he had an ally in Cartho Nasi, something that would serve him immediately. During his stay at the camp, Carrick would have a Force vision that warned him of an imminent Mandalorian attack on Serroco. Worried by such a premonition, the Jedi knew that he should go to warn the leader of the Serroco defense, so Cartho Nasi would help Zayne meet with the leader. Admiral Sol Karath, in command of the Republic fleet, was responsible for coordinating all Serroco troops and fleet. Despite Zayne's good intentions in warning of the impending attack, Karath immediately identified Carrick, and knowing that he was wanted by the Republic for the massacre of the Padawans, he requested the Jedi's arrest. Zayne insisted on being heard about a possible Mandalorian attack. Karath was skeptical of the warning and labeled Carrick as a Mandalorian spy, but in the end, he didn't listen to Zayne. Unfortunately for the Republic, Zayne's vision was real. Mandalorian ships arrived in Serroco space, and they had devised a ruthless strategy for the planet. Instead of engaging in a protracted battle, they planned to launch a devastating nuclear attack on Serroco. Their true objective was to destroy the Republic camps and nearby cities in a swift and brutal attack. Tragically, the Mandalorian plan succeeded. They launched countless nuclear missiles, targeting both camps and cities. The attack was catastrophic, causing massive casualties among soldiers and civilians to the point that it even caused a disturbance in the Force that different Jedi throughout the galaxy could sense, leaving the surface of Serroco completely devastated. Following the planetary destruction, the Mandalorians continued the next phase, boarding and directly attacking Republic ships and their crews. Despite everything, Admiral Sol Karath, Cartho Nasi, and Zayne Carrick would emerge alive, managing to escape on a ship. As the Mandalorians advanced, each attack was more devastating than the last. The army of Mandalore the Ultimate had faced the Republic forces in several battles, which with each defeat set the Republic back even further, raising the growing need for a more forceful response. The Revanchists, led by the charismatic Revan, continued to urge the Jedi Order to actively enter the war by gathering information on the battlefields. However, even more cautious, other players intervened in the conflict, but in their own way, such as Dyre and the Jedi Covenant. In the midst of the great advance of Mandalore and its people, one figure would emerge as a fleeting participant in the Mandalorian Wars, someone who supported neither the Republic nor the Mandalorians. He supported only his cause, Arkoh Adasca. After separating from Zayne Carrick and Griff, Jarrell and Camper found themselves on a dangerous journey. Their relative peace was shattered when they were suddenly attacked by an HK-24 Sirius assassin droid. In the conflict, Camper was seriously injured, leaving Jarrell in a desperate situation. With Camper's life at stake, Jarrell made the difficult decision to seek help from the Arcanians, despite his complicated history with them. This led her directly to Arkoh Adasca. Adasca had inherited control of Adascorp, a major Arcanian corporation specializing in biomechanical research and development. Something that characterized Arkoh was that his ambitions exceeded those of his predecessors. While the Adasca family had been content with Adascorp's already considerable wealth and influence, Arkoh sought to expand the corporation's power to unprecedented levels. During the following years, Arkoh dedicated himself fully to his corporation, until one day some biological samples of someone he had been looking for years arrived in his records. That guy was Camper. After being injured, Jarrell knew that she had to save the life of her friend, so in that moment of urgency, she turned to Adascorp. When analyzing the organic samples, Arkoh was able to find Camper. Adasca used Camper's medical condition to manipulate Jarrell into complying with his plans. During their stay aboard Arcanian Legacy, mobile headquarters of Adascorp, Adasca revealed to Jarrell the truth about his friend Camper and his shady past with them. Gorman Bandrake, better known as Camper, was a brilliant Arcanian scientist who played a crucial role in Adascorp's rise to fame. In his youth, Bandrake was a prodigy in fields of biology. His groundbreaking work at Adascorp included pioneering research on exogorths and their potential applications. This research caught the attention of the Adasca family, who saw immense potential in Gorman's work. However, as Bandrake delved deeper into his investigation, he began to realize the dangerous implications of his work, especially when Arkoh Adasca took over Adascorp. Arkoh pushed for more militaristic applications of Bandrake's research, particularly in the exogorths. Camper's ethical concerns grew as he saw his life's work being twisted into potential weapons of mass destruction. He became increasingly uncomfortable with the direction Adascorp was taking under Arkoh's leadership. Unable to reconcile his scientific pursuits with his moral objections, Bandrake made the decision to flee Adascorp. He erased much of his investigation and went into hiding, adopting the alias of Camper to evade detection by Adasca's agents. But now, thanks to Jarrell's good intentions, Arkoh had found Camper again. Adascorp helped its former worker. His recovery was very easy and simple. However, Adasca lied to Jarrell to make his medical diagnosis sound very serious in order to use Jarrell and force Bandrake to finish his work on the exogorths, threatening to put Jarrell's life at risk. Fortunately for Arkoh, Camper remembered everything perfectly to continue working on the super weapon. So from that moment on, the next step on Adasca's plan would officially begin. Inside the Dascorp laboratories, one of the members of Jarrell's group took advantage of the material that was within reach of his hands. The Arkoh scientists were uncomfortable with the presence of Rohlan Dyre, who was experimenting and reading scientific reports. Faced with these inconveniences, the CEO speaks with the Mandalorian to determine if he was a threat to his plan or not. Rohlan never took off his armor or spoke to anyone. The only words that came out of the Mandalorian's mouth was to ask for more files to study. This impressed Arkoh, and when he engaged in a conversation with the Mandalorian, words were scarce on his part. However, the Arcanian didn't need a long talk, just a favor from the Mandalorian, so they reached an agreement. Adasca noticed that Rohlan had a type of predisposition and obsession with Jarrell, so taking advantage of that, he made a deal with Rohlan. He needed to contact a person that the Mandalorian knew very well, so the questioner would be the intermediary, and in exchange, the Mandalorian would have the authorization to leave the Arcanian legacy along with Jarrell. The head of Adascorp saw an opportunity to profit from the Mandalorian Wars. For this, he organized a meeting aboard the Arcanian legacy, where he brought together key figures from all sides of the war for a special reason. Representing the Republic, Admiral Sol Karath and Lieutenant Carthon Nasi were present, who had just escaped the Mandalorian attack in the Battle of Serroco. And with them, due to unforeseen circumstances, Zayne Carrick also came. For the Revanchists, Alec would be the Jedi chosen to represent Revan's faction. For the Jedi Covenant, Lucendray would be the one in charge of accepting the invitation. And to everyone's surprise, the last to respond to Arkoh, and thanks to the help of Rohlan Dyre, would be Mandalore the Ultimate. The arrival of the Mandalorian leader alerted everyone. However, Mandalore had accepted because Arkoh had promised him that the Arcanian legacy would be a neutral territory with the freedom to negotiate without any danger. Adasca addressed his guests, officially starting the meeting. Adascorp was a major corporate player, but now it will be a galactic one. The meeting had the purpose of presenting the project of the Exogorths made by Adascorp, showing each faction that a weapon existed that could end the Mandalorian Wars, and that one of them could have it. Arkoh planned to auction his creation to the highest bidder. The super weapon consisted on Exogorth creatures that were linked with portable hyperdrives and control units. The cybernetic implants can induce a state of near death to the creatures, which allowed them to survive hyperspace travel. The owner could direct the Exogorths to any system he wanted, where the creatures would revive. There, they would grow and reproduce, resulting in a system infested with endless new generations of Exogorths consuming whatever they can find. A perfect weapon, mobile, self-replicating, unstoppable. The offers were immediate. Admiral Karath, seeing how terrible the weapon was and fearing that it would fall into enemy hands, gave Arkoh the opportunity to ask for whatever he wanted, limiting and respecting the jurisdiction of the Republic. He could have tax breaks, more contracts with the Republic, more government holdings, even a Senate seat. However, Mandalore the Ultimate's offer would be much more tempting. He proposed an alliance, offering Adascorp to be the administrator and supplier to the Mandalorian war forges. Arkoh Adasca would be the weaponsmith to all the clans, and all this without having to offer explanations and limit himself to a system of government such as the Galactic Republic. Tension could be felt inside the Arcanian legacy. Enemy soldiers containing their war impulses filled the room. Just before the auction could be concluded, everything would end abruptly. Carthon Nasi would have a hand-to-hand fight with a Mandalorian being the spark that would light a fire that was inevitable, starting a battle inside Arkoh Adasca's ship. However, all this was planned. Zayne Carrick had donned Mandalorian armor, being the Mandalorian with whom he falsely feuded with Carth Onasi, causing a fight and ending the Adasca's plan. Faced with a common enemy, Carrick and Onasi would even join forces with the Jedi Master Lucien Dray. Soldiers of the Republic, Mandalorians, the Revanchist ally, Lucien Dray, would face each other in a battle inside the Arcanian Legacy, provoking the fury of Arkoh Adasca. During the commotion, Zayne managed to communicate with Camper, triggering the plan against Arkoh's creations. Camper initiated an override sequence, aiming to free the Exogorths from Adascorp's control. Camper's actions were a success in releasing the huge space slugs. The Exogorths, no longer under Adasca's influence, began to act on their own instincts. The freed creatures, disoriented and aggressive, began attacking the assembled ships, including the Arcanian Legacy. This sudden attack caught all parties off guard, changing the focus from negotiation to survival. During the confrontation, Camper used the Adascorp creatures to attack his own leader, causing the death of Arkoh Adasca, putting a sudden and gruesome end to his ambitions. With Arkoh dead and the creatures wreaking havoc, the various factions began to retreat. Zayne and his allies managed to escape from the Arcanian Legacy as it suffered serious damage. Knowing that the threat of the Exogorths was still latent, Camper would communicate with Jarrell, saying goodbye, since the mere presence of these creatures in the galaxy was dangerous, as they could fall into the hands of any individual hungry for power, so that Camper made sure that no one could use them as weapons or for any other nefarious purposes. Through the devices embedded in the creatures, Camper, in a daring final act, embarked on a hyperspace journey where no one could find the Exogorths, culminating in the ultimate sacrifice of both his life's work and his own life. In the final stages of the Taris Siege, in the 3963 before Battle of Dxun, the tide of the battle took an unexpected turn with the arrival of Zayne Carrick. Concurrent with Carrick's return, a new resistance force emerged under the leadership of Senator Hadel Goravus. This well-armed group represented Taris' last organized defense against the Mandalorian invasion. Goravus, utilizing his political influence and resources, managed to rally a significant number of fighters and procure advanced weaponry. Zayne Carrick's help was very important, but surprisingly, another player would be added to the main conflict between the Taris resistance and the Mandalorians. Jedi Master Raana was tasked with heading to Taris and in a limited capacity assisting the resistance. Jedi Master accepted, since she knew Zayne would be there, so it was the perfect time to end her nightmares. The massacre of the 4 Padawans on Taris left families helpless and sad. Taking advantage of this, Raana would lie Shel Jelavan, sister of Zayne's deceased friend Shad Jelavan, so that she could help the Jedi Master to conspire together against Carrick, since the two of them were united. Raana, consumed by guilt and paranoia, had become increasingly unstable in recent months after the Taris massacre. Her actions were erratic and ultimately destructive. She knew that the origin of her behavior was countless premonitions and nightmares that she had, caused by the Padawan, so to find stability again, she knew that she must end Zayne. Raana's plan worked. Zayne, seeing the sister of her deceased friend, approached without any concern. However, Shel, poisoned by Raana's words, managed to have Zayne at her mercy. Despite having him in her sights, Jedi Master Raana was unable to finish the Padawan, as Senator Hadel advocated on his behalf, arguing that now they all had a common enemy and needed to act together to save Taris. The Taris resistance had been informed of the presence of Cassus Fett in the city, more specifically in the Jedi Tower, used as a Mandalorian command center. In order to give a forceful attack to the Mandalorians, this was a perfect moment, finishing off the second in command. So this infiltration mission was assigned to Zayne Carrick, Shel Jelavan, and despite not taking an active part in the war, Jedi Master Raana. On the one hand, Master Raana would enter the Jedi Tower through a different path than Zayne and Shel, so the two, posing as Mandalorians, began the infiltration. The tension between Zayne and the sister of his friend was growing. She blamed Carrick for having killed her brother. However, in a moment of total sincerity, the Padawan confesses that he would never have done that, convincing to Shel of his words despite initially having believed Raana's lies. Zayne was able to enter the Jedi Tower first and encounter an enemy. Playing the role of a Mandalorian, Carrick discovered that Cassus Fett had escaped from the place hours ago, failing in his mission. However, the Jedi Master's madness was present. Misunderstanding the situation, Raana thought that Zayne was part of the Mandalorians and also the Sith. So with lightsaber in hand, she decided to put an end to the supposed next Sith. Both Jedi fought a lightsaber duel. However, Zayne's skills didn't rival those of a Jedi Master, and Zayne was defeated by Raana. Before delivering the final blow, she confesses to Zayne that her concern about the rise of a new Sith and her madness is not something illogical. Thanks to Raana, Zayne hears about the prophecy of the Five, a premonition that she heard as a child from her teacher, Crinda Dre. There will be 5, one for the darkness and one for the light. Another from the darkness stands in the light, while one from the light stands in the darkness. The last one stands apart from all, and among them, all that has been built will fall. Jedi Master Raana and the Jedi from Taris knew of the prophecy and interpreted that those 5 individuals who would bring misfortune to the Republic would be their Padawans. So duty called them, and they preferred to end the lives of those 4 Padawans. And in front of the Jedi Master was the 5th of them that was about to be annihilated. Raising the lightsaber against Zayne, Raana is stopped by Shel, who stabs the Jedi Master from behind. At the right moment, Grief had arrived to rescue Zayne, but Master Raana had not been detained. With her internal turmoil, she attempted to end Zayne's life. However, prior to the infiltration, explosives had been placed in the tower, which had already exploded, causing the collapse of the structure and therefore the Jedi, falling into the fire and the void, causing the death of Raana, fulfilling somehow the Rogue Moon prophecy, the Togruta being the first to die. Before she died, Jedi Master, in a moment of weakness, apologized to Crinda. This name was heard by Zayne, who would use this as fuel to continue his revenge and clear his name. Despite the valiant efforts of Zayne Carrick, Senator Goravus, and the Resistance fighters, the Mandalorian forces proved too powerful to repel. The siege concluded with the Mandalorians taking control of Taris. After winning Taris, the fall of this crucial war represented a significant victory for the Mandalorian Neo-Crusaders and a devastating blow to the Republic, since Taris had been a simple rehearsal for the invaders, preparing for the biggest prize, Coruscant. However, on Taris, there was a very special item that was in the crosshairs of several players in this war, the Muur Talisman. Thousands of years ago, the discovery of Corriban by the fallen Jedi in 6900 before Battle of Dxun marked a crucial moment in galactic history, setting the stage for the rise of the Sith. Ajun Tapal, Sorsu Sin, Remulus Drapa, Shoshan, and Karnes Muur exiled from the Jedi Order for their exploration of forbidden darkside knowledge, found on Korriban, a world steeped in darkside energy with a native species, the Sith. Among these dark Jedi, Canis Muur created the Muur Talisman. The primary power of this subject is transforming beings into ragdolls, mindless, violent creatures under the wielder's control. It also corrupts Force-sensitive users, granting them increased darkside powers. Almost 3 millennia later, returning to the present day during the Mandalorian Wars, the warriors of Mandalore knew of the presence of this artifact on Taris, sending Pulsifer to search and find this terrible weapon that could help the cause of Mandalore the Ultimate. But Pulsifer wasn't the only one looking for this. The Jedi Covenant, still reeling from the aftermath of the Padawan Massacre on Taris, found itself driven by a new urgent mission. It was not even the time to mourn the loss of their dear friend Raana. This mission was sparked by a disturbing vision experienced by Jedi Master Quanelia. In her vision, Quanelia witnessed the Jedi Masters facing hordes of ragdolls and being defeated. Where ragdolls were not ordinary creatures, they seemed orderly and determined in their actions. At the center of this nightmare, Quanelia glimpsed the powerful artifact, the Muur Talisman. But of all, the most worrying thing was who was leading these creatures. Canis Muur himself using his artifact, a possible message of the return of the Sith. In addition to seeing this, Quanelia also visualized other things. 4 individuals. She saw Zayne Carrick, but she didn't identify the other 3 people. A tall and imposing figure dressed in black armor, a black cape, and a terrifying black helmet. A man with blue eyes and blonde hair. And finally, another man with disheveled blonde hair, rough looking, and wearing a black trench coat. Shaken by this vision, Quanelia shared her experience with the remaining members of the Covenant. The group, already paranoid about the potential rise of the Sith and desperate to prevent such a future, saw the acquisition of the Muur Talisman as a critical mission. Lucien Dre argued that controlling such a powerful artifact could be key to combating the Sith threat everyone feared. So finding this artifact was a top priority. However, the Covenant knew they were being watched by the Order. So for this mission, Lucien would send a Jedi Shadow from the Covenant, agents with their identity removed from any record. That Jedi would be Celeste Morne. The Covenant Shadow Celeste Morne arrived on Taris, tasked with retrieving the Muur Talisman. There, she encountered Zayne Carrick in grief. Despite initial suspicion, the 3 formed an uneasy alliance when they discovered that the Mandalorian scientist Pulsifer had already taken the talisman to Jebble. Celeste and Zayne pursued Pulsifer to the planet previously conquered by the Mandalorians. Even though the Jedi Shadow already knew of Zayne's identity and his bounty, she acted as an ally, waiting for his next move. They infiltrated the Mandalorian camp, where Pulsifer was experimenting with the talisman's power. But the Mandalorian was arrogant and trusted the darkness of the artifact. The situation quickly spiraled out of control as Pulsifer's experiments backfired, turning many Mandalorians into ragdolls, causing a plague to hit the place. As Celeste, Zayne, and Griff escaped from the creatures, they realized the seriousness of the situation. Jebble was actually not a simple Mandalorian base, as it was a staging area where countless Mandalorians were preparing for an invasion. But now, the real danger was that the plague of Mandalorian ragdolls could stop being just on Jebble and spread to countless planets in the galaxy. The vicious cycle of the Muur Talisman had begun in the form of the Battle of Dxun, where Neo-Crusaders fought against the Mandalorian ragdolls. The latter infected new hosts, increasing the number of wild creatures. During her stay on Jebble, Celeste was able to interact with Zayne and despite knowing of the atrocity he had supposedly carried out on Taris, she realized that it had all been a lie. Upon being able to talk to him, she understood that he would never have dared to murder his own friends. Without knowing that Celeste worked for Lucien in the Covenant, Zayne told her that the person who had truly caused the massacre had been her former master, Lucien, along with the Jedi Masters of Taris, causing great surprise in the Jedi. Furthermore, he confessed to Celeste that he had more information. In order to clean up his public image, he only had one name, but Zayne knew it was the key to everything: Crinda, surprising the Covenant shadow even more and leaving her thoughtful. Given the urgency caused by the countless Rackles, Zayne and Celeste decided to find a communication center and alert the Republic of what was happening in Jebel. Upon finding the place, Celeste first decided to speak privately. However, she contacted her master, Lucien Dray. With internal doubts, she told him everything that had happened and also that she had found Zayne. Lucien was clear and concise, ordering to bring him the talisman and kill Zayne Carrick. Seconds after ending the call, without knowing what was happening, Zayne entered the communication center and thinking that the Republic was already alerted, Carrick kneels and begins to communicate with someone else. Meanwhile, Celeste behind him is about to arrange Lucien's order when she is stopped by Zayne's action. Carrick, with the kindness that characterized him, communicates with someone unexpected, Cassus Fett. Surprised to see the Jedi, the Mandalorian listens the warnings and Zayne reveals what happened on Jebel and asks him not to land on the planet as it could be catastrophic for everyone. The Jedi's goodwill takes Cassus by surprise, and after listening to him carefully, he cut off communication. After some unfortunate events, Pulsifer manages to capture Zayne, and when the Jedi was almost about to be vivisected for the second time in the war, the battle took an unexpected turn when the Muur Talisman betrayed the scientist, choosing Celeste Morne as the new hostess. Unfortunately for the Mandalorian, Pulsifer would be devoured by his own army that had transformed into Rackles. The dark influence of the talisman threatened to overwhelm Celeste, but a heartfelt conversation with Zayne Carrick made her reconsider her loyalties and the true nature of the mission. Moved by Zayne's unwavering commitment to do the right thing, Celeste made a fateful decision. She chose to sacrifice herself for the greater good. Recognizing the danger of the talisman represented to the galaxy, she decided to betray her initial mission. In a final act of altruism, Celeste allowed herself to be sealed within Lord Drapa's oubliette, an ancient stasis coffin to contain the talisman's evil. Before saying goodbye to Zayne, and to provide him a little help in his odyssey against the Jedi Covenant, Celeste tells him to go to the planet Odrin, where she was supposed to meet with the Covenant, and as a last act, she granted him a mysterious key. Almost inside the oubliette, Celeste tells Zayne that he must find Crinda and confess what happened with the actions of the Jedi Covenant, since she wouldn't have allowed any of that. Something strange was happening inside the organization. With those words in mind, Zayne says goodbye. When Celeste's fate was sealed, the Padawan managed to escape the doomed planet. He would be rescued by Jarrell, Alec, and Rohlan, and in orbit, Carrick would witness the outcome of his warning. Recognizing the serious threat, Cassus Fett took Zayne's warning as true, and made the decision to bomb Jebel from orbit. The planet's surface was raised, along with the Rackle threat, in a devastating display of Mandalorian military might. Upon witnessing this, Zayne is shocked since Celeste had stayed on the planet. Thinking the worst about Celeste's status, he decided to honor her memory. Carrick was willing to defeat the Jedi Covenant, and thanks to her, that task was now easier. For Lucien Dray, the balance was tipping in his favor. Thanks to the intervention of Hayze and through many contributions with the Dray Trust, Lucien received a seat on the Jedi High Council, taking over from Jedi Master Dorjander Case. It's during a meeting that Lucien is informed by Hayze that the ship of Celeste Morne had arrived at the indicated place, the planet Audrin, after her mission on Jebble. On this planet, the Covenant Shadow landed with the Muur Talisman, all of these being a plan by Zayne, which involved Jarael posing as Celeste Morne. This deception was crucial as it allowed him to gain access to Audrin's restricted areas, including the Sanctum of Audrin. With the key that Celeste gave to Zayne, he, Jarael and Griff were able to enter. Inside, they witnessed a collection of countless artifacts related to the dark side, which Lucien's organization had managed to obtain over the years, thus achieving their goal, having proof of what the Jedi Covenant was doing and exposing the secret collection of Sith artifacts to the Jedi Council. It seemed that luck was smiling on Zayne. However, in order to clear his name and be able to leave the planet Audrin alive, he would have to pass one last test. Jedi Master Feln had found him, ready to end Zayne Carrick. After capturing Zayne, the Jedi Master had a talk with Dray, where he explained what happened. Feln had found Zayne snooping around the Sanctum and also possessed Celeste's key. This led the two Jedi Masters to conclude that in his madness for the dark side, Carrick had murdered Celeste, and he had come to Audrin to steal more Sith artifacts. As the tradition of Master Feln's species dictates, in those lands combat had to be hand-to-hand, starting a violent confrontation between the two Jedi. In the chaos, the Jedi Master, driven by panic of the Sith prophecy, made a fateful decision. Believing that reinforcements had arrived to help Zayne, and fearing that the Sith artifacts would be taken, Feln activated some explosive charges causing the destruction of the sanctuary. However, the explosion was not as he thought, as the destructive power was too much, devastating the village and even killing friends and companions. With fury consuming the Jedi Master, Feln, determined to deliver the final blow, is surprised by a stab in the back. The culprit was Borjek, a fellow warrior of the Jedi who, accompanied by survivors from the village, had decided to kill the Master for betraying his people and their traditions. Feln being the second after Raana to be crossed off Zayne's list. Jarael and Rohlan had arrived for Zayne and Griff. After the great destruction of the village, the Jedi regretted that all the evidence he had against the Covenant had been destroyed, but Jarael surprises Carrick that they were able to save some so they could be used to clear Zayne's name. Zayne's entire crew managed to reach Curson with the evidence in hand, but upon landing at the spaceport, Carrick and Griff are caught by another Jedi, Summer. This might have seemed like the end of Zayne's odyssey, but it wasn't. Everything was going to change forever. Summer had reconsidered everything. He had seen that Lucien was no longer himself, and deemed him unfit to be their leader. For him, the most important player within the Jedi was Crinda Dray. The Sith War had caused a great wound in the Jedi Order, a conflict that could have been avoided. Exar Kun's master was the great Jedi Master Budu Siospas, the same master as Crinda. But the Order knew that Budu had failed, despite having perceived a great void in Exar. So Summer made the decision to protect his master at all costs, confessing to the Council the truth about the massacre on Taris. He accepted the punishment in exchange for total immunity for Crinda. He was not loyal to Lucien, but to Crinda. The Council agreed, and they, along with Summer and Zayne, dedicated themselves to formulating a plan to stop Lucien Dray's machinations. Planning a false arrest of Zayne, Summer manages to get the Padawan inside the Dyre state, the Dyre's place of residence, so that Carrick and Crinda can meet. Seeing the desired loot, Lucien is pleased by the success of Xandar's mission, but something changes in the plan. Hayze asks to be the one to meet with the boy and not Crinda, since she was indisposed. Carrick realized that Hayze suspected something and his plan was in trouble, so Zayne attempted to create a distraction, emphasizing his act of Sith and acolyte of the dark side by lying about having in his possession countless Sith objects, claiming that he is invincible. However, Hayze didn't believe the act of Sith and discovered Zayne and Summer's plan. With the plan compromised, Summer went to the entrance of the place and opened the main door, letting in a group of Jedi linked to the Order, beginning a fight between countless Jedi of the Covenant and Jedi of the Council. However, from the sounds of the battle between the Jedi, an alarm begins to sound. Hayze signal. From the shadows, he had been manipulating events, playing on the fears and paranoia of the members of the Covenant, and after years of planning, Hayze had initiated his master plan, codenamed Vindication, an insurrection by his army of Covenant acolytes against the Order. Lucien, Cornelia, and Zayne were left perplexed by the order given and the betrayal of Crinda's faithful servant, and to complete his master plan, Hayze gained control of the computer systems of Republic ships in orbit. In a shocking display of power, Hayze instructed to the Republic fleet to fire on the breach to the Dyre estate, resulting in the death of Summer, the third on the list of Jedi Masters of the First Watch Circle. As destruction engulfs everything around him, Hayze removes his robes, revealing a shattered body, and also the possession of numerous Sith artifacts, making him a powerful enemy. Now, adopting the name Darth Hayze, he rejoices that his army would serve both sides of the Force, neither Jedi nor Sith. His ultimate goal was not the triumph of Sith ideology or the preservation of Jedi teachings, but rather the reshaping of both orders in his own twisted vision. He saw himself as a necessary balance, transcending the traditional dichotomy of darkness and light, but he being the ultimate figure with unlimited power. Hayze's interpretation of the prophecy of the Five further illustrated his belief. According to Hayze, the prophecy had already been fulfilled. Cornelia represented the one from the light standing in the blinding darkness, with her Jedi background contrasting with her involvement in the Covenant's dark deeds. Griff symbolized the one from the darkness who stood in the light, a criminal who allied himself with Jedi causes. Zayne Carrick embodied the one from the light, maintaining his integrity and Jedi ideals despite the challenges he faced. Lucien Dyre represented the one for the darkness, a Jedi Master whose actions led him down a dark path. Hayze saw himself as the one who stood apart from them all, neither fully Jedi nor Sith, but a unique force-shaping advance from the shadows. This interpretation allowed Hayze to justify his actions as part of a greater plan, positioning himself as a necessary balance between opposing forces. By claiming this role, Darth Hayze sought to legitimize his manipulations of both Jedi and Sith elements, presenting his hybrid approach to the Force as the fulfillment of an ancient prophecy. Zayne, stunned by the power that Hayze emanated, asked Lucien the story of this enemy. Hayze, in his time as an apprentice, was always a disaster, just as Zayne, and he was also overshadowed by Barristan Dyre, Lucien's father and closest friend. Jealousy and resentment festered in Hayze's heart as he watched Barristan excel in ways he couldn't. A failed attempt to prove himself worthy of becoming a Jedi Knight left Hayze scarred and bitter, setting him on a path of darkness. Added to that envy are all the heroic acts of his friend Barristan, and also that he was able to find love in Lucien's mother, Crinda Drey. Such was the darkness that ruled within him that in the Sith Wars, where the two of them fought, Hayze, poisoned by the words of the Sith, betrayed Lucien's father, killing him. However, he wouldn't emerge unscathed, as he would suffer consequences in his physical body. Determined to follow his ambition and goals, he would manage to be admitted as a Drey family steward. Amidst the chaos of Hayze's insurrection, Zayne Carrick attempted to turn to Lucien's mother. However, he was stopped by his former master, leading to a confrontation between them. As they clashed, Greef discovered the truth about Crinda Drey. She had been kept in stasis, however no one knew of this. Such was the secrecy of the Jedi's state of health that her student Quanelia, upon seeing her, thought she was dead. Such was the pain she felt upon seeing this, that she chose to take her own life, becoming the fourth member of the Covenant to die. The fight between Carrick and Drey was stopped by the surprising presence of Crinda, where Lucien, seeing his mother in a dying state, runs to her aid. Crinda, with tears in her eyes, asks him for an explanation about his atrocity of killing the Padawans on Taris, revealing that she was against it. After a talk between mother and son, Crinda, in her last words, explained to Lucien that his past teachings were wrong, and that he had to face the future with humility. And then, Crinda died in his son's arms. Fury consumed Lucien, blaming his mother's death on Greef. Defending his friend, Zayne stood between the Jedi and Greef whenever he could. Their duel took them to the courtyard where Hayze was. In a clever move, after a statue fell on Lucien, Zayne emerged victorious from their duel. Seeing this, Darth Hayze was pleased and invited him to join his side. But all of this, it was all part of a plan. Zayne and Lucien had teamed up to take down Hayze, and after a move by the two of them, Drey used the control mechanism to redirect the fire of the orbiting Republic fleet to fire on the state. The result was an explosion, killing Hayze. Following Hayze's defeat, Lucien Drey was widely believed dead. The Covenant was over. Everyone dead. There were no leaders and no Jedi seers from the First Watch Circle. However, Lucien had survived the explosion, though he was badly wounded, scarred, and blind. Following the battle, Drey decided to withdraw from the public eye and from the Jedi Order. He established a hidden enclave on an unknown planet, where he began training a new generation of Jedi. This group, known as the True Covenant, was dedicated to continue the original Covenant's mission of preventing the return of the Sith, but with a renewed focus on wisdom and foresight. The exposure of the Covenant's secret activities and the devastation caused by Hayze's betrayal forced the Jedi High Council to reevaluate everything within the Order. The events of the Jedi Covenant's downfall served as a crucial prelude to the Jedi Order's full involvement in the Mandalorian Wars. The Jedi Order found itself in a state of turmoil and self-reflection. The exposure of the Covenant's secret activities and the near disaster caused by Hayze's machinations had shaken the Order's confidence and highlighted the dangers of unchecked fear and misguided prophecy. In the aftermath of these events, many Jedi began to question the wisdom of the Council's non-interventionist stance. The revelation that a secret faction within the Order had been willing to go to such extreme lengths made the immediate danger posed by the Mandalorians seem all the more pressing. It was here that Revan, Alec, and the Revanchists gained more traction within the Order. their calls for action, was dismissed by many as reckless, now found a more receptive audience among Jedi who had seen firsthand the consequences of inaction. Everything would change on the mission to Cathar, where the Revanchists would end up winning the debate. We're in the early stages of the war in 3973 before Battle of Dxun was the second Mandalorian conquest. Revan, Alec, and their group continued their excursions to various planets destroyed by the Mandalorians, gathering irrefutable evidence of the atrocities in the Outer Rim. On the surface of the planet Cathar, Revan and his followers were surprised by two things. First, the inhabitants of the planet had vanished, and on the other hand, the Revanchists were being confronted by different Jedi of the Council, ordering them to immediately retreat and stop their incursions. In the chaos of the debate between the Revanchists and the Jedi of the Council, Revan saw something underfoot, a mask. Upon taking it, all the Jedi were surprised by the inhabitants of the planet, the Cathar. They were back. They ran in terror towards the sea, and behind them, the reason for this, the Mandalorians were chasing them. The Jedi took their lightsabers and attacked the Mandalorians, but it was useless. Both attackers and victims were phantoms. They were all experiencing a vision of the Force that revealed the horrible truth of what had happened there years ago. The vision showed the final moments of the Cathar people when they were attacked by the Mandalorian forces, including women and children. Unable to do anything, the Jedi saw hope. In this vision, a Mandalorian warrior, seeing the Cathar helpless, faced her comrades, placing herself among the victims and begging for mercy, arguing that the Cathar had been defeated and that the killing was unnecessary. However, her words were of no use. Cassus Fett ordered the attack to continue, mercilessly annihilating men, women, children, and even the Mandalorian who begged for mercy, illuminating the Cathar Sea with Mandalorian gunfire. The helmet discovered by Revan buried in the sand, it was of the Mandalorian who had attempted to save helpless inhabitants, something that left the Revanchist leader overwhelmed. Revan, standing on the war-torn beach of Cathar, is moved by the vision of the Force. He takes the mask from the sand, feeling the weight of lost lives and future responsibilities. Putting it on, Revan transforms, and brandishing his violet-bladed lightsaber in the air, vows to embody the fallen warrior's bravery and end the Mandalorian Wars. His mask thus becomes a symbol of his new purpose, the birth of a legend who will fight for justice. This powerful experience served as irrefutable evidence of Mandalorian war crimes. Revan and his Revanchists used this to argue that the Jedi could no longer stand by while such atrocities were committed. The impact of this event was profound. Many Jedi who had been hesitant to join the war were swayed by the undeniable evidence of the Mandalorians' brutality. The Jedi Council, faced with this insurgency, eventually agreed to Jedi participation in the war, but in a reluctant manner. Revan's followers would actively enter the war in the form of the Mercy Corps, with a focus on providing aid and healing to those affected by the war, thus providing a middle ground. This position allowed the Jedi to navigate the tensions between the traditional teachings of the Order and the more militant approach of the Revanchists. Revan demonstrated an uncanny ability to predict Mandalorian tactics and outmaneuver their forces, earning the respect and admiration of Republic military leaders. As word of his success spread, more Jedi flocked to his banner, drawn by his unwavering commitment to protecting the innocent. The recruitment of more warriors to the cause was not incoming on the part of the Revanchists, such as Alec, who after a trip, found and tried to recruit Jarrell, the Arcanian of Zayne's group. However, in a strange way, and continuing with the unusual behavior, Rohlan Dyre flatly refused to let Jarael join the Revanchists. Such was the disgust that Alec and the Mandalorian began a confrontation. The Revanchists and Zayne Carrick's groups stopped the fight. In the end, Jarael rejected the invitation, and Alec left for war. When the Revanchists finally gained permission from the Jedi Council to actively intervene in the war, a parallel event unfolded on Coruscant that would have far-reaching consequences. The Mandalorian scientist Demagol had awakened from the coma he had been in since the events of Flashpoint, and it was time to put the evil scientist on trial for all the crimes he had committed against the Republic and the Jedi. Zayne Carrick, Grief, and Alec showed up to welcome Demagol to his trial. However, the scientist's behavior was strange, but the Jedi justified this by the fact that he was under the effects of anesthesia. Minutes before the trial, Zayne and Grief had a talk outside the Senate Hall on Coruscant, sitting with their droid Elby. The Jedi lamented that Jarael and Rohlan were not with them to witness Demagol's sentencing as they departed to a different destination. But at that moment, Elby, hearing Zayne speak of Demagol, claimed that the one being prepared for the trial was not Demagol. Zayne thought his droid was damaged. However, Elby again claimed that the Mandalorian inside the Senate Hall was not Demagol. Elby, as a loader droid, in his memory, had detailed records of his interactions with different people, including the weight of each of the individuals he had carried. Elby noticed discrepancies between the weight of Demagol from Flashpoint and the Demagol who was currently on trial, giving a difference of 17.4 kilos. It was at that moment that Zayne Carrick understood everything. Demagol had switched places with Rohlan at some point, exchanging their armor. After Flashpoint, Rohlan had started acting strange. He had an obsession with Jarael, and he was also interested in science and knowledge, something that in their first interaction on Vanquo, Rohlan didn't show at all. The real Rohlan Dyre, dressed as Demagol, was going to be framed for the scientist's crimes. And worse yet, Zayne realized that Jarael was alone in space with Demagol. After this, Zayne knew he had to do something about it. Inside the Senate Hall, Alec is lashing out at the fake Demagol, remembering all the atrocities he did during the war. The Revanchist euphoria turns to rage when the Mandalorian tells him that he is not Demagol, throwing him into the air using the Force. Taking advantage of this, Zayne and Grief, dressed as Republic personnel, take the Mandalorian and rescue him, effectively proving that the false Demagol was Rohlan. After escaping the Republic, Rohlan reveals that during the mission to Flashpoint, when he went to get Demagol after freeing the Jedi, Rohlan made the mistake of turning his back on the scientist who injected him with a substance that caused his muscles to weaken and left him unable to speak. And then Demagol changed his armor and identity for Rohlan's. Of all the reasons, the most important one why Demagol would have done this, without a doubt, was Jarael. Looking back, Demagol's masterpiece was his experiments using the DNA of a Jedi Master Arkoh in order to create a race of Mandalorian Knights. And after countless defeats, a child emerged, Demagol's triumph, Adasca. The two developed a very strong bond, being Demagol's favorite student at his research center in Osadia. After tragedy struck the scientist's life following the attack of the Crucible against his headquarters, Adasca was captured, leaving Demagol without the opportunity to see his greatest creation again. Even when Demagol joined the Mandalorians, he continued searching for his children and especially Adasca, investing more than 20 years in the search until he finally succeeded. Adasca was Jarael. Revealing the true identity, Jarrell is happy to see her master. Grieving at the loss of his research, Demagol and Adasca arrive at Osadia, where he will recover his legacy no matter the cost. The scientist's old academy was still standing, however, it was being controlled by the Crucible. Demagol knew of Jarrell's physical capabilities. Proud of her having been his best creation, she would be a great help against his enemies. Faced with this, Antos armed Jarrell with a very special weapon, Exar Kun's double-bladed lightsaber. Inside the academy, Jarrell and Demagol defeated all of the Crucible staff. However, the children were still missing, so they split up to search inside the compound. While Jarrell searched, an old enemy would appear to complete her revenge against her, Shantik. Shantik was a female Celtron. Her early life was marked by tragedy and hardship. She was born to a Celtron mother, and her father was none other than Antos Wirrik, Demagol. As a child, Shantik was part of Demagol's experiment on Osadia. However, unlike Jarrell, she didn't show the desired abilities or physical prowess that Demagol sought, generating contempt towards her. Unlike Jarrell, who was captured by the Crucible when they attacked Osadia, Shantik met the same fate, but in a more cruel way. She was handed over to this organization by order of her own father Demagol to settle accounts with the Crucible and keep his project afloat, generating in the girl an unreal hatred towards her father with a desire for revenge. Over time, Shantik rose through the ranks of the Crucible, becoming a feared and respected figure. At some point, Shantik and Jarrell met again in this organization, where she developed a particular rivalry with Arcanian. Jarrell, however, managed to defeat Shantik in combat, which led to her demotion. This fueled Shantik's resentment and drove her to become even more ruthless. Inside the academy, the final battle between Jarrell and Shantik took place, where the Arcanian has her at her mercy, awaiting the final blow. At that moment, entering from the roof, Zayne Carrick and Rohlan Dyre appeared to rescue Jarrell from Demagol. The Celtron woman's desire for revenge would come true in that very place, since in front of her was Jarrell, but in addition, her wishes would be fulfilled when she met her father again. But the meeting wouldn't be so fraternal, since having Adasca as his greatest victory, the contempt for his own daughter would not be long in coming. Demagol asked Shantik where the children from his new generation project were, and she answered that the children were in the schoolyard. Demagol went outside to find no one. It was at that moment that Shantik confessed to having killed each of the children from Demagol's project. After seeing what happened, Demagol, Rohlan Dyre and Zayne Carrick have a talk where they tell the scientist that his situation is ridiculous, since the one who actually had force powers was his biological daughter Shantik, and not his supposed great victory Jarrell. Taking advantage of her father's distraction and thirsty for revenge, Shantik attacks Demagol. However, she didn't prevent the Mandalorian from taking Exar Kun's lightsaber, turning it on and piercing his daughter's chest with the blade. But Exar Kun's weapon was special and unique in the galaxy. It was double-bladed, causing it also pierce the Mandalorian scientist at the other end, killing both father and daughter, thus ending the life of the Mandalorian scientist, Demagol. The Mandalorian triumph in the year 3962 before Battle of Dxun marked a critical phase in the Mandalorian Wars, showcasing the Neo-Crusaders' military might and strategic prowess. During this year, Mandalore the Ultimate's forces achieved extraordinary success against the Galactic Republic, taking their invasion to new depths of enemy space. The most notable event was the daring assault on Dyre, but that was as far as they could get. As the Mandalorians continued to outmaneuver Republic forces, winning battle across multiple sectors, Republic morale plummeted. When the Mandalorians achieved unprecedented victories in Republic space in 3962 before Battle of Dxun, a few months had already passed where the Jedi Order had accepted intervention of Revan and his followers in the war. Despite this, the Order wasn't entirely convinced of it. There were even Jedi who rejected both this idea and the Revanchists. One of the most notable, and who would cause great annoyance in the Order, would be Jedi Master Dorjander Case. His history in the Order goes back years, where Dorjander fought in the Great Sith War, where he was captured by the Mandalorians. Unlike the countless Jedi who died on the battlefield or those who managed to be rescued, Master Case's fate was different. Captive in the Mandalorian camps, he fell in love with a Mandalorian named Varda, accepting and adopting a new lifestyle, that one of the Mandalorian creed. Dorjander's new life with Varda would take a turn for better as they were expecting a child. However, the Jedi Master's happiness would be short, as a Republic bombing against the Mandalorians would result in the death of Varda and her unborn child, leading Case to question the Jedi's methods. Once Exar Kun was defeated and the Great Sith War ended, Dorjander returned to the Jedi Order, where he was even given the honor of belonging to the Jedi High Council. It's at this point in his life that the Mandalorian Wars began. Case was one of the Jedi who most opposed their active participation. Unfortunately for Dorjander, Revan's cause gathered allies within the Order, and his group became a well-supported movement. As a result, Case's firm position of non-participation wasn't well received, so they found a way to force Case to resign from the Council and be replaced by Master Lucien Dray. The Jedi Master was totally disappointed. He was convinced that the corruption within the Republic and the Order was already total, but his conviction remained intact and he saw potential in a possible new regime that could bring order to the galaxy: the Mandalorians. With proper guidance, the indomitable Mandalorian warriors could renounce their warlike beliefs and become the best hope of the galaxy, and those indicated to guide them could be the Jedi, but not the corrupt ones. So, to ensure Mandalorian victory in the war, Dorjander knew he had to balance the scales of military power. The Republic had Jedi in its ranks. Case knew the Mandalorians must have their own, so he came up with a plan to go to Dxun and bring the young Jedi to be trained and educated in Mandalorian culture. Dorjander wasn't alone. For a time he was recruiting more followers to his cause, creating a secret faction called the Mandalorian Knights, who had clandestinely sworn loyalty to the Mandalorians, even meeting with Mandalore the Ultimate to share their ideals and plans. Still remaining within the Jedi Order, with his trap in mind, Dorjander joined his followers with the Revanchists at the forefront of the war, beginning his plan. With Republic Commander Dallin Morvis and sharing the battlefield with Zayne Carrick, Dorjander and his followers fight in the Battle of Dxun. The conflict seems to be heading in the right direction. However, in an attempt to achieve victory in the battle, Dallin Morvis and Zayne are captured by Dorjander, revealing their true allegiance. Taking advantage of every member of the Republic Army, Case incorporated each one into the Mandalorian ranks, including Zayne. With a larger army, Dorjander attacked the planet Cathar with the intention of taking the signal post. Once captured, he headed to the final step of his plan to capture Dxun. At the periphery of the Theta system stood a fortified orbital facility known as Thetacom. This crucial hub served as a primary conduit for interstellar communications, linking the planet to the broader galactic network. The station boasted additional features, including medical facilities with isolation capabilities. Dorjander's crew took advantage of this by posing as sick people and gaining entry. and from within, the new Crusaders took control of the station. When Fata fell, the way was clear. Essien, Halthor, and Fata had been captured. They all traced a perfectly clear path to Dxun, and with the conquest of the station, all means of communication to Dxun were controlled by Dorjander. Upon reaching Dxun, Case's forces quickly overwhelmed the Jedi Enclave. They rounded up the Jedi and trainees, with Case instructing his troops not to use blaster fire to avoid harming the children. There was some initial resistance from Dxun's Jedi Masters, including a lightsaber duel between Case and the Jedi Sar Lestin. However, when one of the Case's dreadnoughts arrived, Lestin realized the fight was lost. Case, along with his Mandalorians, gathered the younglings, speaking to them in a friendly manner and explaining that they would be joining the Mandalorians. A troopship landed near the Enclave to transport the children. At this point, Case believed that his plan was succeeding. However, he was wrong as Zayne Carrick, aided by other companions, managed to ruin the Jedi Master's plan by blowing up the ships where the Jedi children would be taken. After this, Carrick and Case had a brief confrontation. To Dorjander's surprise, several Mandalorians objected to the child abduction despite following Mandalore's orders. Hopeless and analytical of the situation, and driven by the memory of his partner Verta, Dorjander realized his mistake, surrendering. The Mandalorian Knights faced trial on Coruscant, where Case persistently pleaded their cause before the Senate. Even in defeat, Case maintained his vision. For Zayne's part, after defeating Dorjander, he was reunited with his loved ones, including Jarrell. His life as a fugitive from justice was over. He was assigned a new role in the war, as a special diplomatic agent under the authority of Captain Morvis, providing moral guidance to Republic soldiers during their conflict against Mandalorian forces. "15 years had passed since Mandalore the Ultimate decided to lead his warriors to the greatest feat in their history. 15 years spreading terror throughout the galaxy. 15 years without true opposition and enjoying resounding victories. However, from the year 3961 before Battle of Dxun, everything would be different. The change of course of the Mandalorian Wars wasn't due to the numerical superiority of the Republic, but to the brilliance of a single individual. Revan emerged as the fundamental force that destroyed the Mandalorian offensive. His tactical genius surpassed even the most experienced Mandalorian strategist, leaving them stunned and overwhelmed. Revan knew the Republic could win by following two tough courses of action: devoting its industrial might to defeating the Mandalorians and be willing to pay a terrible price to do so. During the years 3961 and 3960, it was time for the Republic to fight back. Revan's military acumen quickly became apparent as he led Republic forces to several victories against the Mandalorians. His strategies were effective, catching the enemy off guard and slowly pushing them back. As a result of these successes, Revan was eventually named Supreme Commander of the Republic's military forces. With a new Supreme Commander at the helm and Malak as his trusted second-in-command, the Republic began to make significant victories against the enemy. His leadership inspired both troops and citizens alike, rallying support for the war effort across the galaxy. Revan's tactical genius, combined with Malak's strength and loyalty, formed a formidable leadership duo that the Mandalorians found increasingly difficult to counter. The planet Taris was liberated from Mandalorian control, and not only from them, but also from the criminal organization called the Exchange. Juhani, a Cathar female, was one of their wearers. She had been sold to the Exchange, but the liberation of Taris gave her a second chance, being freed by Revan. Juhani, inspired by her savior, decided to join the ranks of the Jedi Order. The first planet to fall under the Mandalorian regime was Althir, where Revan, after 15 years, in the Second Battle of Althir, managed to defeat the new Crusaders. Cassus Fett was already a high-ranking and respected leader among the Mandalorians. He was known for his tactical skills and ruthlessness in combat. In this year, the events at Jagga's cluster elevated his fame to a galactic level, making him the most wanted man in the galaxy. Revan, as the Supreme Commander, proved to be a leader willing to make difficult decisions in pursuit of victory. This was particularly evident in the campaign to liberate Onderon and its moon Dxun from the Mandalorian control. The Second Battle of Onderon, occurring around 3960 before Battle of Dxun, was a complex operation, while the liberation of Isis, Onderon's capital city, was symbolically important. Revan recognized that the true strategic objective lay in the Mandalorian stronghold on Dxun. The fighting on the moon was particularly intense. The Mandalorians, knowing the importance of their stronghold, fought fiercely, often employed brutal warfare tactics, their goal being to inflict maximum casualties on Republic and Jedi forces. Revan's decision to commit so heavily to the Dxun campaign resulted in significant Republic casualties. Thousands of soldiers fell in the battle to secure the moon. But the Supreme Commander deemed this sacrifice necessary to achieve the victory. He demonstrated his understanding that sometimes in war, terrible prices must be paid. Dxun, being taken over for the Mandalorians from the beginning, had a singular importance. The Battle of Dxun was one of the bloodiest and most challenging engagements of the conflict. Revan ordered a large-scale assault on this Mandalorian stronghold, fully aware of the potential costs. The jungle moon had been fortified by the Mandalorians for decades. The natural hazards, combined with Mandalorian defenses, made it a formidable target. Hidden minefields and traps dotted the landscape. Concealed anti-air turrets posed a severe threat to Republic aircraft. Revan's battle plan was complex and risky, requiring hundreds of small units to probe the Mandalorian defenses for weaknesses. Meetra Surik was one of the commanders tasked with implementing this strategy. The brutality of the battle was evident from the start. Many Republic troops never made it to their designated landing zones, instead crashing in the hostile jungle thanks by the Mandalorian defense. Those who survived the crashes faced immediate attacks from jungle creatures and found themselves pinned down by Mandalorian warriors. Meetra Surik's forces, reduced to a quarter of their original strength, exemplified the desperation of the battle. In one instance, they were forced to charge across minefield in a last-ditch effort to strike at Mandalorian positions. The tenacity of Mandalore's warriors was remarkable. From every Mandalorian soldier that fell, the Republic lost 10. The fighting was relentless, with continuous bloody assaults as the Republic tried to root out the deeply entrenched Mandalorians. Countless bodies of Republic soldiers and the hulks of fallen spacecrafts littered the jungle ground. Late in the battle, Mandalore the Ultimate, realizing the tide was turning, ordered most of his forces to abandon the moon. When the Republic finally breached the Mandalorian fortress, they found it defended only by a small group of volunteers who had chosen to stay and fight. Despite the immense cost in lives and resources, Revan's forces eventually emerged victorious. Such was the commitment to capturing Dxun that the Republic army would either win the battle or lose the war. As the Mandalorian Wars progressed, Revan and Malak became increasingly influenced by the brutal realities of the conflict. The shift from peacekeepers to hardened military leaders marked a gradual but profound change in their methods. Clearly demonstrated by their strategies, while effective, they often came at high cost in lives. Yet in their eyes, it was the only way to end the Mandalorians. And ironically, neither the Republic population nor the troops dared to doubt Revan. It was all justified. They were at war. The utilitarian approach to his troops and cruel strategies, while military successful, began to erode the clear moral lines Revan once adhered to as a Jedi. The constant battles were overshadowing his early Jedi training, but above all, in his military campaigns, he began to cross paths with ancient secrets that would deeply affect his destiny. During their investigations on different planets, Revan and Malak came across devices unique to the galaxy. The star maps are enigmatic artifacts of immense mystery, created by the conquering species forgotten in time, the Rakata. Dxun. Tatooine, Kashyyyk, Manaan, and Korriban, where the planets of Revan and Malak followed the track of these mysterious devices that projected holographic images of the galaxy, and that each containing a fragment of a greater secret. As Revan and Malak uncovered each map, they found themselves drawn deeper into an ancient mystery, one that promised knowledge and power beyond their imagination. The star maps whisper of something greater, a prize of unimaginable value, the Star Forge. The call to this great treasure would forever change the lives of the two Jedi, as on Dxun, deep within unknown ruins, Revan and Malak encounter a particular guardian that identified itself as the Overseer, tasked with subjugating the slaves who had built the monument where they were, honoring an immeasurable power. Something that surprised the two Jedi was that the Overseer had been waiting for its master for over 20,000 years. This droid was even older than the founding of the Republic itself. The machine referred to its master as the Builders and was waiting for them to return in search of the knowledge of the Starforge. Revan and Malak debated whether to continue investigating or not, as they could sense the dark forces emanating from the place. They knew that if they continued, the Jedi would expel them from the Order, and if they crossed the door, there would be no turning back. But Revan was willing to do anything. As the war reached its climax, Revan pushed the new Crusaders steadily back until he cornered Mandalore the Ultimate at Malachor V, a war shrouded in dark side energies and ancient mysteries. The planet itself seemed to pulse with a sinister power. Revan split his fleet in two, giving command of one half to Mitra Surik, who, face-drawn and grim in determination, prepared for the battle that would decide the fate of the galaxy. After years of war, the Republic fleet was stretched thin. Remains of ships, the most the Republic and Revan could muster, weakened and vulnerable. And unfortunately, upon reaching Malachor, the Mandalorian attack was savage, and worse, without their leader Revan present on the battlefield. But at the heart of Revan's strategy was a terrible weapon, the Mass Shadow Generator. Designed by the brilliant Zavrak engineer Bao-Dur, this device had the power to manipulate gravity itself, a force as fundamental to the universe as the Force itself. Its potential for destruction was matched only by the moral weight of its use, a burden that would fall heavily on those who dared to unleash it. As the battle raged on, Revan, already in the midst of the conflict, sought out Mandalore the Ultimate for a final confrontation. The two leaders, each representing the peak of their respective forces, met in a duel that will be remembered for generations. The battle was more than a test of combat skills. It was a collision of ideologies, a final reckoning between two visions for the future of the galaxy. Mandalore was a formidable warrior, where any Jedi would have been defeated by him. However, facing the Mandalorian leader was the Jedi Order's most powerful champion. When Revan's time came, his prowess as a Jedi ascended to legendary status. The violet blade of his lightsaber became a symbol of inevitable defeat for the Mandalorians. In the end, Mandalore fell, and with it, the dream of Mandalorian conquest, thus defeating the fourth Mandalore in all history, Mandalore the Ultimate. From afar, Revan's silhouette could be seen next to Mandalore's body having a conversation, a revelation that would surprise even the most experienced Jedi. Amidst this chaos, the Jedi found themselves besieged not only by the enemy fire, but by the insidious influence of Malachor V itself. The dark power emanating from the planet below seeped into their minds, exploiting the wounds formed by years of bloody war. As the battle reached its peak, Meetra Surik stood on the brink of a decision that would haunt her for years to come. Malachor V had been a trap, a ploy to lure the Mandalorian fleet close enough to the planet to unleash the mass shadow generator, taking advantage of the gravitational anomalies unique to the Malachor system to instantly destroy all ships orbiting the planet. As he directed his forces against the Mandalorian ships, Revan ordered his general, Meetra Surik, to use the fleet as bait to draw as many of the enemy ships within range of the weapon. The Mandalorians had taken the bait, and once they were within the area, Meetra decided the fate of the battle. Standing on the bridge next to Bao-Dur and watching the destruction of the Republic, she looked at Bao and said nothing, only nodded. The superweapon had been activated. In an instant, the fabric of space itself seemed to warp in terror. The effect was catastrophic. Mandalorian and Republic ships were caught in the weapon's grip, crushed by unimaginable gravitational forces. Malachor V's surface cracked and shattered. In the span of a few horrific moments, the battle and the war was over. The atmosphere exploded in a flash of fire, leaving only ash behind. Everything on Malachor's surface, every plant and tree, every animal and insect, was instantly vaporized by the intense heat. The ground cracked, leaving deep scars across the devastating landscape. At the same time, hundreds of ships, both Republic and Mandalorian, were torn from the orbit. They all crashed into the world's surface, striking with such a speed that their hulls penetrated several kilometers into the ground, burying twisted metal remains and broken bodies. Countless lives were snuffed out in a split second, lives of Republic soldiers, Jedi, and Mandalorians alike. The cost of victory was etched into the very face of Malachor. Where once there had been a planet, there was now only a shattered husk. Its broken remains held together by the lingering effects of the superweapon. But it wasn't just that. The Battle of Malachor V was one of the most devastating events in galactic history that left an indelible mark on the Force itself. Malachor had something unique. When Meetra activated the superweapon, she unleashed a cataclysm that wiped out not only both armies, but also tore the very fabric of the planet. The instantaneous death of countless Force-sensitive beings created a wound in the Force, an echo of grief and loss that reverberated throughout the time. But it wasn't all victory for the Republic and the Revanchists. Meetra Surik would suffer the punishment of having activated the weapon. Unable to bear the overwhelming trauma, she unconsciously severed her connection to the Force, an act of self-preservation. The Mandalorian forces were decimated, their fleets destroyed, and the leadership in ruins. The Republic had won, but at a terrible cost. Revan and Mitra's ships had been safely out of the superweapons range, but the impact of their actions would resonate throughout the galaxy for years to come. However, this wouldn't be the only thing that would resonate with Revan. His final conversation with Mandalore had changed the history of the galaxy forever. Revan stood next to the broken body of Mandalore the Ultimate. The Mandalorian leader lay dying, his armor cracked, and his life slipping away. Coughing blood, Mandalore removed his mask, the most sacred symbol of his people. As Revan watched the light fade from Mandalore's eyes, a sense of unease crept into his mind. There was something unsettling about the way the Mandalorian warlord had fought. A desperation. Revan knelt beside him, and it was here that everything would be revealed to the Jedi. Mandalore had started a war that wasn't of his own making. With the few forces he had left, and with enormous sadness, the Mandalorian confessed that the war shouldn't have ended like this. They promised him the victory. They had betrayed him. Bewildered, Revan asked Mandalore who he was referring to, and his enemy let out a ragged breath and his voice reduced to a whisper, escaping two words: the Sith. Revan's eyes widened with the weight of this revelation. The Mandalorian Wars had all been part of a Sith plot. They used the Mandalorian pride and hatred for the sole purpose of testing the Republic's strength. This was the reason for Mandalore's strange behavior and sudden need to attack the Republic. Mandalore wouldn't lead his people to war just because a Sith told him they would win. It was more complicated than that. The Sith had used the power of the dark side to manipulate him. Only as Mandalore lay dying at the Revanchists' feet, the Sith spell cast on the leader broke, and he realized he had been tricked. The war Revan had just won now seemed like a mere skirmish in a much larger and dangerous game. The victory he had sought had come at a terrible price, not just in lives lost, but in the realization that the true enemy had been hiding in the shadows. As the dust settled on this devastating conflict, the key figures who had shaped its outcome faced the consequences of their actions. Mitra Surik returned to Coruscant to face judgment from the Jedi Council. Despite her vital role in ending the war, the Council was deeply troubled by her actions, particularly her decision to follow Revan against their wishes and her involvement in the catastrophic events at Malachor V. The Council also attempted to meet between Revan and Malak. However, they didn't respond to the Jedi. Revan, knowing the importance of the Mandalore mask for the Mandalorians, took the symbol of leadership and power and hid it away on a remote world. This decision was part of Revan's larger strategy to prevent the Mandalorians from reuniting under a new leader, effectively ending their threat to the Republic for the future. The Republic celebrated its hard-won victory, hailing Revan as a hero and savior. Across countless worlds, all the inhabitants rejoiced at the end of the long and brutal conflict. Revan's tactical genius and leadership had turned the tide of a war that had once seemed unwinnable, bringing peace and stability back to the galaxy. Yet, as the celebrations continued, a shadow had fallen over the galaxy. Unbeknownst to most, the seeds of a far-greater conflict had been sown from the ashes of the Mandalorian Wars. As Revan and Malak ventured deeper into the unknown regions, echoes of their victory on Malachor V faded to whispers. They searched these territories for answers to the dark manipulations that had led the Mandalorians to attack the Republic, to find that evil and defeat it. But with every step, they found themselves treading a dangerous path. In forgotten worlds, They uncovered ancient secrets and terrible truths. The power they sought to understand began to seduce them. As they delved deeper, the line between seeking knowledge and embracing darkness blurred. The heroes who had saved the galaxy were being reshaped by forces beyond comprehension. In the depths of uncharted space, far from the light of the Republic, Revan and Malak faced their greatest trial. The evil they sought to defeat managed to subdue two of the most powerful Jedi in the Order. The epicness of Revan and Malak's victory in the Mandalorian Wars would only be compared to their fall from grace. When they left after the Mandalorian Wars ended, they were Jedi. When they returned, they were something else. The light had gone out, and from the darkness would emerge two figures whose names would resonate throughout the galaxy: Darth Revan and Darth Malak.